Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, welcome officially to the channel. This is, as you know from the intro series, where I go into odd game accessories or peripherals that developers made to get us more into the game mentally or physically. Today we're going to talk about one that really wasn't made to get us more into the game. It was made to give an entire subset of gaming community access to the medium in the first place. It's time to talk about the NES hands-free controller. Gaming has come a long way since its inception, moving from the Magnavox Odyssey all the way up to the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. However, one of the things that gaming has always struggled with is the inclusion of people with mental and physical disabilities. Today we have pushes towards accessibility options, like Forza Horizon 5 including things like sign language, and Microsoft's own adaptive controller aimed at making gaming a hobby that almost anyone can enjoy. However, this wasn't always the case. For a very long time, this kind of accessibility wasn't really a priority. Most games had no options for accessibility outside of difficulty selections, and pretty much no controllers were available to help people with physical disabilities. That's where our most recent oddity comes in, with the Nintendo hands-free controller. I know what you're asking, how does this thing work? It looks huge and awkward and, well, compared to a normal controller, it would seem that way. However, if you were, say, paralyzed from the neck down, you might think differently. How this worked is you hung it over your neck using the supplied strap, and then you would use your chin to move the wand that had a ball of foam on it. This controlled your up, down, left, and right controls that you would normally have on a standard controller. I already know what you're asking. How are you going to press buttons? That's where this other tube piece comes in. Inhaling on it would activate one button, and exhaling would activate another button. Doing this with more force would allow you to access the start and select buttons, respectively. Adjustments could be made with the dials in order to increase or decrease the sensitivity of each of these. This may seem unusual to many of you capable of using a standard controller, but to many who couldn't, this opened up an entirely new world of opportunities for them to be included in something everyone else took for granted, assuming they knew about it. You see, the controller itself was only available through Nintendo. Customers would have to call Nintendo's customer service line to purchase one, and know to call in the first place, as it was never widely advertised during the NES lifespan, outside of a few magazine ads. This made it a mostly unknown controller to many parents who could have used it, and now it's a very rare piece of Nintendo controller tech that can run nearly $400 or more on eBay today. In fact, this very controller was one of the earliest examples of a controller built specifically around accessibility that I was able to find, even on ablegamers.org. And to think it only came out in 1986. Part of the problem is there just wasn't enough market for these kinds of controllers. It sounds cold to say it that way, but it's true. What works for one person who's disabled may not work for another with the same kind of disability. So while the standard controller will work for most people, and they can at least adapt to it, people with physical disabilities will often need custom modifications in order to make it work for them. Sometimes in the case of one particular parent, they would take the step to call around the different console manufacturers looking for an answer to eventually find one in a company called 8BitO. Those of you who know me know I'm a fan of them already. This story makes me even happier. A man named Andreas Carlson was looking for a controller for his son Oscar, who was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy type 2. This is a very serious neuromuscular disorder that affects the nerve cells that control voluntary muscles. So his son had issues holding a controller. He looked around for something that would help, even going to Microsoft's adaptive controller, which is roughly around $100 for the base unit, and needs modifications from there to customize it, and can get very expensive very fast. Try as he might, he just couldn't find anything until he reached out to 8BitO, who wanted to help and listened to Carson's story, began working on a controller design that would suit his son. On top of taking the time to design it, they only charged him $35 for the controller. This is a great story, and one that's sadly all too uncommon due to the difficult nature of handling these kinds of disabilities. One thing that's clear from digging into this oddity is that it's a shame it's an oddity. Let me explain. More work, much more work needs done in this area. Gaming is meant to be inclusive. Awareness and demand for accessibility needs to be greater so that no one's left behind. Don't get me wrong, this controller and the adaptive controller are good, and I'm glad they exist. The story from 8BitO is heartwarming, but it also shows a major gap in our ability to include players with physical disabilities. And this is just one of the many areas that need to be addressed in a meaningful way so that everyone can enjoy the hobby who wants to. However, for now, I should step off of my soapbox and thank all of you watching and listening to me rant a bit. If I can ask you for one more indulgence, please hit the like button. It really helps me out. And if you aren't, consider subscribing. That also helps me out a ton. Until next time though, thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. And until next time, happy gaming.